I did not want to step into that role, but it just happened overnight. I was kind of the only other adult in the house for him to vent to talk to. I wanted to sit there with my fingers in my ears and go la 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 la. Like I didn't want to have to deal with any of that.
Tully, welcome to Hold the Moment.
Hi, thank you for having me. I feel so honoured to have been included this season. I've been waiting for the call up, patiently waiting by the phone.
Well, we always save the good ones till last.
Jim always keeps people waiting. That's the thing. Tell us a bit about your mum. So her name's Kay, Kay. Mm-hmm. Tell me about her.
I always say that she kind of was the original girl boss before girl boss was a thing. She worked full-time. My parents both worked full-time. And she really cared about her career. Was a real career woman. She kind of had all the power suits. And she'd work these long hours and be this absolute, powerhouse of a woman running her own recruitment agency. And then she'd come home, would have these big dinner parties on the weekends. She was kind of doing it all. She was just the best, vivacious, loud, very big heart. She would cry every night at home and away, didn't matter what was happening. There was always something worth crying about in home and away.
Very emotional.
Yeah, very emotional, something else that we have in common. But she was just, this absolute powerhouse of a woman, 3 kids. Her and Dad married a little bit later in life, so they had us a little bit later. But yeah, she was the best. My childhood I was really, really lucky, really privileged.
So how old were you when you first noticed something was changing about your mum? And what was it that was the first thing you started to notice?
Well, she was diagnosed in 2002. She was 51 and I was 15 years old. And I have 2 younger brothers. One is a year younger than me and then one was 9 at the time. That's when she was diagnosed.
That was young.
Yeah, very young. As I said, they had us later in life. So, but things like Dad thinks there were signs from as early as 1996. So that's a good chunk of my life. But I guess for me, what we noticed were things like losing a car, which we've all done before, but it was consistently,
Like in the car park?
In the car park. At the shopping centre we'd gone to since we were kids. Dad would have to come down in his car and do happy laps trying to find the car. Opening the fridge and having like 4 bottles of milk. Multiple, yeah, and she just kept replacing it. Stuff like that. I mean, we had a Christmas advent calendar that she would do little treasure hunts for us rather than chocolate. And she'd write these, little riddles and they'd rhyme and you'd have to run to the place and there'd be another little clue. I remember one year she couldn't remember where she'd hidden everything. So the clues didn't make sense. They didn't lead anywhere. And I remember being really surprised at that, because she'd always pulled that off.
Usually so on the ball.
Yeah, and I was like, what do you mean you've forgotten where you've put everything? Like, what? So stuff like that is probably what I first noticed. But Dad definitely worked his butt off to keep a lot of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes pretty under wraps.
When things started to change with your mum and the roles started to flip a little bit, going from being one of the kids to suddenly feeling like a parent or an adult in the house, how did that look? In a day-to-day basis,
I mean, I hated it. I really hated it. I wanted to just throw myself on the ground and have a tantrum like I was a toddler. It just felt so unfair. I did not want to step into that role, but it just happened overnight. I actually loved going to school because it was a place where I could pretend none of it was happening. No one at my high school knew what was going on back home. I stopped having friends over because she was embarrassing me and I didn't want to have to explain what was going on and why she was acting strange and, why she was forcing my friends to talk about the magnets on the fridge like they were her, again, prized possessions. But very quickly I'd come home and Dad, who had gone, we'd gone from a 2-income household to a no-income household. Dad had to quit his job to become Mum's full-time carer. And as is often the case, sadly, a lot of their friends and even family just disappeared. And I was kind of the only other adult in the house for him to vent to talk to bounce ideas off. So I would come home from school and just get these daily dumps and downloads of what I'd missed that day and what had gone on. And I just did not want to hear it. I didn't want to know. I I wanted to sit there with my fingers in my ears and go, la, 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 la. Like I didn't want to have to deal with any of that.
Was he sort of chatting to you because you were in it as well? Like you're in the house and so you really understood everything, whereas other people maybe didn't?
Well, I don't think he wasn't talking to anybody about what was going on. He did not lean on or reach out to any of his friends, and they certainly didn't sort of come knocking to ask if they could help, sadly. I think it probably has a lot to do with the fact that Dad probably did keep a lot of it to himself. He's of that sort of generation that think that, you know, my wife, my family, I should take care of it. But he had no one else to talk to. And very quickly, suddenly, we were having to make these decisions together, like joint decisions about Mum and her care and her health. And I was like, I'm not qualified for this. Like, I don't know anything about anything. I'm a teenager. I don't know what the best decision is. But I did notice very early on that I felt this responsibility to be my mum's advocate. I don't know if it's because I was the only other female in the house, and I did often feel like an alien in that house. I felt really misunderstood and isolated and alone. But very early on, I felt the need to advocate for her, to put myself in Mum's shoes and think about what Mum would want, and that sometimes caused conflict and friction with my dad.
Can you give me an example of something that you felt uniquely placed to advocate for your mum about?
Yeah, I can. So, look, it took so long to get the official diagnosis. We tested for everything under the sun. Sleep apnea, menopause, UTIs, brain tumours obviously is one that you know.
Which often dementia goes with all of those things, doesn't it? And those are usually things that have to be ruled out.
Yeah. But also when you have someone that's so adamant that they don't want to go to those tests and they don't want to have those, you know, which I fully understand.
Yeah.
It was an even more drawn out process. You know, she'd say, I don't want you coming with me to my dad.
And she sounds very strong and powerful, you know?
Which was great when she was well, but when she started, you know, losing her grasp on reality, that stubbornness became very tricky to deal with. But I remember by the time we got the diagnosis, so much had happened and the decline was so rapid that Mum wasn't really with it anymore. And Dad and I had a discussion about whether we should even tell her. Dad didn't think there was any point. He didn't want to upset her. You know, he thought that it doesn't even matter at this point. And I really strongly believed that she had a right to know and that she should know, even if that means sort of telling her multiple times.
Have you been able to talk to your dad about that since?
No. I always get really nervous when I do interviews like this because I don't want to upset him further. And I always sort of nervously send him the link and we email. This is an emailing family. I actually got an email from Dad basically telling me that it was time for Mum, and I screamed and shouted in my apartment by myself in Melbourne. I just couldn't believe that he'd emailed me that information. But that's just what we've done since his diagnosis. Mum was the feeler. Mum was the emotional one, you know, Mum.
So you're like your mum.
Mum was the blubberer. And I feel like in losing her, we kind of all forgot how to show emotion and how to connect and how to outwardly love each other. So yeah, the ramifications of something like a diagnosis, it whirlpools and ripples on for years and years.
Your mum was in care for quite a long time, and I read that you'd said that you were almost angry that your mum took so long to die. Can you sort of explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, so it's crazy. It went from me, you know, living with this big secret at home and not telling any of my high school friends because A, I was embarrassed, B, I didn't think they'd get it, to suddenly one of my best friends from high school, her dad was diagnosed with young onset dementia, which was wild. And in fact, it was this really beautiful moment where she kind of came to me and said, I'm so sorry that we were not there for you during high school. I'm so sorry that we didn't do more. And I said, you didn't know. No, we were kids and I didn't know what I needed. Like, even if I'd told you, I wouldn't have known what to ask for. What could you have done? What I wanted was for someone to help my dad and someone to, you know, take care of my mum. You couldn't have done that anyway. But her dad, very quickly, his decline was unbelievably rapid. And I think within like 2 years, he'd passed away. God. And I sat there at his funeral, seething. seething at my best friend's dad's funeral, which was a conflicting feeling. But I was just so angry. I was so angry that his journey and his, illness had been so quick, because Mum's was just dragging on. And I thought, it's unfair. It's unfair that he got to...
It's cruel.
Well, it's just no way of living, is it? This is why when I met you, Jim, I was so blown away and really touched and just so amazed by you, because it just didn't feel like we ever had this like great period of knowing she had early onset, but she was still okay, and it was...
You didn't have making the most of it.
No, it was just bad, all really bad. And when I met you, I could not believe just your positivity and your optimism and your zest for life and your determination. It was so inspiring. And I just, it made me really sad that we didn't get that with Mum, or, she didn't get a chance to, I don't know, it was just like, wow, it can look so differently if you just sort of try and change your mindset and look at it from a different point of view.
Looking back at your experience as a young carer, what resources or support would have made life easier for you or your family, or what sort of things would you like to see out there?
Yeah, I think that there is still, sadly, a big gap in that market. I think that, Dementia Australia, the 24/7 helpline are so great, but there is still this sense of really wanting community. I think that my DMs are full of young carers because I'm kind of like this beacon of light. They see, oh, she gets it, but I'm just one person. And they all want to connect and feel understood by each other.
Because it's so unusual, right?
Yeah, and I feel like there needs to be more resources for young carers. But for now, I have, a group with over 500 members on my Instagram of young carers. So for me, there needs to be sort of more support for them, more community. They just want to go to a pub on a Sunday and have a few beers, maybe talk about dementia.
Offload, just
maybe
chat.
Maybe not. Maybe just talk to people that get it.
It's like a comfort.
Yeah, and that group chat goes off. It is popping off every day, either with, hey guys, I've just had a really hard day, I just wanted to vent, or a question, hey, does anyone have any advice on what I could do in this situation? And they come together and they share, whether it's books, resources, podcasts. It's a really beautiful space, but it's only in my Instagram DMs.
Yeah.
And I really want to work on creating something more formal and more substantial for young carers for the future.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thanks,
and we're
guys.
really with you all the way, aren't we? Hold the Moment is a podcast from Dementia Australia, produced by Deadset Studios.